Aquatic Center for 29 years, from where you have produced many, many champions to make our nation proud. We welcome you, Pradeep sir, and the stage is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Partha. Good morning, everyone. It is nice to have chat with all of you. Hope all of you are safe and your family is safe. Please take care. Make sure your family is more safe. Follow the instructions of our government of India and the state governments, because it's a very crucial time for all of us. Hope the situation changes and we'll get back to the pool as early as possible. Okay, as Partha already informed you, I've been working in swimming field for the last almost 40 years. So it's an opportunity. First of all, thank Swim Federation of India and Sports Authority of India for giving us this platform, because we've been sitting at home for almost 40 days, and this probably the best thing that happened to us, the coaches of our country. So exchange of knowledge is one of the tools where we can spread the swimming all over the country. And also, I've been attending the classes of the past 5 or 6 classes, and it's been extremely good for the coaches. And hope that other classes also will go good. And let me just go to the first first slide. Talk to the subject. My subject is stroke patterns, so sprint versus distance. This subject is nothing new, and every coaches who have been coaching the competitive swimmers will be doing it day in and day out. So nothing new about it. So everyone knows, but then probably it is good that upcoming coaches who are just starting to train, maybe some information for them. See, I'm just starting the introduction. It's in our squad training. You might have noticed some swimmers are sprinters. That is, they do 50 and 100s, and some of them can't sprint well, but have pretty good endurance, and they sustain a strong pace over longer distances, like 800 and 1500. This determined by their type of training. Actually, how this sprinters and long distances, it depends on how the training program of their team, and also the major thing is genetic. How their genetics are, the body type is. Apart from this, apart from the sprinters and the middle distances, you may notice some swimmers who perform well in both these categories. They are normally optimal in the middle distance event, that is like 200, 400, relatively faster than the pure sprinters and long distances in those kind of 200 and 400 events. They can be classified as middle distance swimmers. Like Ian Thorpe is a classic example on this breed. So we have sprinters, we have middle distances, and we have long distance swimmers, that is 800 and 1500. At present, we have long distance beyond 1500 that the swimmers swim, the open water swimming. That's from 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers to 25 kilometers. So that is also come into the category of distance swimming. Both distance swimmers and the sprinters demonstrate enough strength and power in the pool, because to continue training for that, they need to have those kind of strength and power. But the distance swimmers rely on endurance training to be able to swim on the longer races, while sprinters fall back on conditioning to short distances with high intensity works. Each has its own merit, even though endurance workout may seem very harder because of the distance involved. They may swim much longer time, more number of sessions. So it looks or it sounds harder, but again, depends on how the swimmers enjoy their training. But in short, all these areas depend on how the stroke techniques are developed in their primitive age, in the early stages of their training, and also the genetic differences of the athletes. So you understand what I meant. These areas are definitely defined by the genetical differences, and each of them, how their stroke technique is developed at their primitive age. Primitive age means at the early stages of their swimming. So coming to the stroke techniques, which I was just talking about, the stroke techniques are developed it means all the stroke techniques are right now, it is based on research is done by the scientist. So this is based on optimizing propulsion. Propulsion is, moving forward, that is swimming faster, to swim faster. Minimizing resistance. The three factors, one is optimizing propulsion. Second thing is minimizing resistance. What are the resistance that a swimmer get it? You get frictional difference, you get wave resistance, you have frictional resistance, then you have the, the bodies touching the water. So you get that kind of frictional resistance. So there are different resistance that we minimize the resistance, and then to gain maximum efficiency of the stroke. Maximum efficiency of the stroke means once you do a stroke and you need to cover the maximum distance because you are already spending certain amount of energy. So when you spend a certain amount of energy, it's like when you spend 100 rupees to buy something, that we look for maximum benefit for that 100 rupees. It's not that we only get for 90 rupees and the 10 rupees go waste. It's not that. One stroke is done and you will have to cover maximum distance, so you gain the maximum efficiency of the stroke. To achieve these goals, the action of the arms and legs are tuned into a rhythm of the body's roll. See, the arms and legs, our upper limbs and lower limbs are moved to gain the propulsion, which is in a rhythm, which is being tuned into the body roll. Body roll, especially on the freestyle and the backstroke, okay? But when swimming at the different paces, the swimmer must adapt the technique which suit the demand of the pace. The swimmer will have to adapt their own technique to adapt the different paces, the demand of the different pace. Demand of the different pace means you have the energy demand, and you have the, how long that you're going to swim the distance. Like if it is a sprint or a distance event, it has a different energy demand. In this session, what we are going to have is, I will try to explain the difference between the paces of sprint and distance. Okay, I hope I'm not going too fast. Okay. The main difference between the paces in the combination of stroke, combination is stroke frequency. And the stroke frequency is the stroke cycle per minute. That is the stroke cycle. And the stroke length. Stroke length is the distance covered in each stroke cycle to optimize swimming speed. The main difference is somebody who is doing a higher frequency or somebody who is doing a long stroke distance. Compared with the distance swimming, sprint swimming is characterized in a greater average swim velocity and stroke frequency. So comparing with the distance, the sprint swimming has a higher frequency, the stroke rate. Naturally, because of the higher frequency, our velocity is speed. The swim speed is much, much higher. But unfortunately, because of the higher frequency when sprinting, the stroke typically, because the swimmer has less traveling time, the covering of the distance, because of the higher frequency, the distance covered is actually less because we do faster frequency, so the traveling time is lesser. That is why the number of strokes are more high. To swim, the greater swim velocity does not compensate adequately to enable the same distance to be covered into the reduced time available, because the time available between each stroke cycle, it doesn't allow us to cover the same distance as the distance swimmers in each stroke cycle. When swimming long distances, the sprint speed cannot be maintained because of the body's ability to supply adequate energy to the muscles. So when you are swimming faster, your body spends more energy. Unfortunately, when we are swimming for a longer distances, we cannot sustain to supply the same amount of energy to have the same speed because of the body's inability to supply that much of energy because of the body's metabolism. So as muscle increases their speed of contraction, every time the muscle contract, there are certain energy spent. Because the muscles contract, that we can start pulling. When you're pulling, the muscle is contracted and releasing energy. So because of that, the energy expenditure raises rapidly because it go very high. Thus, the energy required to swim at a faster stroke rate increases dramatically in sprint events. Consequently, stroke frequency needed to slow down to reduce the stroke a rate of muscle contraction, and therefore the delay of the accumulation of lactic acid happens. When you swim in a higher pace, we cannot sustain for a longer period of time because of the energy deficiency which is going to be supplied to your working muscles. That is why beyond certain speed that we will not be able to continue with the same speed. As you all know that different energy metabolism, the first source, the second source, and third source of energy. The initial 10 minutes, 10 seconds that you can go with your first source of energy, then your glycolysis. After that, you slow down, then your lipid metabolism start, your third source of energy. And so the same extent of speed cannot continue. So that is why, that is because of the production of lactic acid or the fatigue set into the body, we will not be able to continue with the same stroke rate and with a high strength. The fact that sprinting is characterized by a higher stroke frequency and less stroke length than distance swimming explains the negative relation between both these variables. So you understand difference between the sprint stroke frequency and comparing with the long distance per stroke. So each swimmer, this is very important for the swimmers, for the coaches to understand, each swimmer needs to find his optimal stroke rate to maximize performance to each event pace. So different event has different pace. So 50, 100 has a different pace. Some 100 swimmers will swim 200 free events also. So 100 swimmer will not have the same stroke pace as the 200 swimmer, 200 event. So each swimmer needs to find his optimal stroke rate to maximize performance at each event play. So during the practice, this is most important for the coaches and the swimmers to work out what kind of number of strokes that is required to go into the each stroke. This rate varies considerably among swimmers because of their respective physiological structure, body shape, and anthropometric characteristics. This changes from swimmer to swimmers because of their body shape, their ability to produce energy, or their anthropometrical, that is their arms, the limbs proportions like height, weight, all those characters. So it varies among the swimmers, it varies. So naturally, the stroke rate and the stroke distance will vary from swimmer to swimmer. Especially, stroke length is positively related to the height of the swimmers and the arm span and the length and the hand foot cross sectional area. So it is mainly, differs at the arm span. How big is the arm span, the height of the swimmer, and how good is the crossing areas of the body, that is their core areas and the legs, the bodies, the length of the body. Generally, the males are taller than females. The males tend to have a greater stroke length compared to the females when swimming at the same race pace. So even of the same race pace, naturally the different sex, they will have a different stroke rate and stroke length and stroke frequency. So that is what the coaches should realize, and coaches will have to work on this in a different levels with the different levels of swimmers with the different distance. Studies show that swimmers use a similar hand pathway with the maximum vertical. That is, there are different dimensions in stroke. The different dimensions are the depth of the stroke, the width of the stroke, and the length of the stroke. So some of the swimmers both do a similar depth in the stroke and maximum width in the stroke in the sim paces. But the time when these events occur with the stroke cycle depending on the sim pace. But the timing of the stroke, it is depending on their swimming pace. The swimmers have a deeper average pull path when they are swimming. than distance than when they're sprinting. So the distance swimmers will have an average, the deeper catch, because they will have to stay in front. They have to stay in by the forward part of the stroke more. That is the stretch of the stroke. The average range of lateral displacement of the finger also tend to be greater at a distance space by sprinting. Same way, for the sprinting, the width needs to be a little more than the distance swimmers, because the upper limb displacement has been related to a magnitude to body roll. Because the more the body roll that you have, the more the stretch that we get in front. So we stay in front of the body than just stay at the back of the body. Okay, that is, we swim downhill than swimming uphill with the body streamlined position. Means the increased magnitude of shoulder roll and hip roll as distance space. So the distance space will have a more stretch in front. The importance of kick portion of the freestyle sim stroke is a highly discussed topic among the coaches and athletes. So another factor is the kick. The kick, the importance of kick, that is actually the kick serves three important functions in the swimming stroke outside the just propulsion. Other than the propulsion, the kick also gives the other important advantages in the overall swimming of each swimmer. So the kick creates lift. The lift is the one which make move forward and act as a stabilizing force and also sustains inertia. I will explain this in each of them. It's a lift. What is lift? In a fluid that is in water, the ability to minimize drag is higher on the radar for all the swimmers. So to move faster, we will have to minimize the drag force in the water. So the kick reduces the drag in several ways. The kick to keep your body up, the kick is being partially a propulsive thing. It gives you a 10 to 15% propulsion in freestyle and backstroke. So it gives you that lift part of it in the kick. In freestyle, the kick is asymmetrical because it is not same. It is a flutter kick. The downward face of the kick is more powerful than the upward, creating lift in the back half of the body. So the kick of the down part of the kick will give you an advantage of keeping your body up and the lower body up, so that we can move forward without having a problem at the lower part of the body, because lower part we don't have any kind of support. In the upper part we have the lungs to support us to the buoyancy. But in the lower part, unless you do the kicking, there is nothing that to keep us floating. So that is the lift part of the help that the kick is doing. So to effectively create both lift and the propulsion with the kick, athletes need proper angle mobility, the angle flexion, and the kick that originates from the core. It has to originate from the core. The second part of the kick is a stabilizing force. So good hip-driven rotation also minimizes the drag by allowing the swimmers to become more streamlined position. So when we go into a proper rotation in a stroke, the swimmer can easily penetrate through the water and move forward with a good body roll. The body roll is shoulder, the core, the legs. So the whole body is rolled, so we can move forward with the least resistance, with the more faster. But excellent side-to-side rotation is more important and require extra stabilization. This is where the kick comes to play. The stability, to increase the stability on a side-to-side rotation, We just require an extra stability on the body. That is what the kick gives. Okay, in a properly timed stroke, the powerful of the down kicks coincide with the end of the pull phase, and in a good correct stroke technique, the most powerful part, that is the down part of the kick, is end with coincide with the end of the pull phase. Okay, the last part of the pull, which helps to stabilize the body. And the third one is the inertia. The inertia is just where that you stay at the same place. Here, because the kick that is giving you the propulsion, then you are not going to a level of inertia, because the most propulsive part of the pull part is the arms, because there is going to be a dead point. That is where the inertia is created. But because of the kick gives the propulsion, so that you will not find that dead spot and you continue to move. What happens if you stop? Is in a stroke, if you have a pause in a stroke, then you will have to use an extra force. That is, you can see the first law of motion of Newton that gives the law of inertia. Then you'll have to use an extra force to move forward. Instead of that, because the kick gives you that certain extent of propulsion, that you don't find a dead spot in stroke like backstroke or in freestyle, even in other stroke. So then comes to a stroke phase of the duration. So we have the kick phase, now the stroke phase of the duration. The swimming stroke cycle is typically divided into 4 distinct phases. That is the entry, that is a pull, and the push, and the recovery. The pull consists of that. You have the entry, you have the pull, and you have the push, and the recovery part of it. This allows us to compare phase duration of various swim strokes at an effective tool for the coaches to assess the development of technique. So these are the typical sequence of the stroke, where when we are teaching or analyzing the stroke, and this is the areas that we can sequence wise that you can analyze. Studies have shown that swimmers adjust the time spent in each of the phases to meet the physiological and performance objective of each distance. So each distance and each of these phases, they adjust the stroke. Like you have a distance stroke where you have entry and stretch, and like the sprint, you have different phases, like you have faster recovery to come in. So they will adjust the stroke phases. Sprint swimming is characterized by a shorter entry phase and longer pull and push phases in comparison to the distance event. So I'll show you the chart below that for that. With the longer relative time in the entry phase when swimming distance events, and the other, the phase supports the idea that at this page, swimmers adopt the style to improve the hydrodynamic position of the body, to reduce the stroke rate and improve the economy of swimming. Meantime, the distance and the entry phase, when you're swimming a distance events, they do a longer stroke distance and cover more distance. That is to move in a most hydrodynamic position, so that you get a very good streamlined position to reduce the resistance to move forward with a very good body roll. When the underwater stroke cycle, within the underwater stroke cycle, the catch position is also occurs at the different instances relative to swim paces. Depending on the sprint distance or middle distance, after the entry, the catch phase of the stroke cycle will also differ from time to time, because for the distance even the catch phase will differ because it's later. Meantime, in the sprint, it's after the entry, the immediate catch start because of the stroke frequency. And in middle distance even, it is in between the sprint and the middle distance, the long distance, because the middle distance is faster than the distance even, and maybe a little slower than the sprint even. This is the sprint and distance space of a comparison of the stroke. So the entry pace, these are the fraction of seconds that percentage of time that it stays back into the entry, pull, push, and recovery phases. So this is just a comparison with the 50 and the 400 paces. Okay, the blue part is the 50 and the the light blue and the dark blue. So 400 pace is the other one. Okay. Now it comes to the next part of the body roll. The body roll is the rotation of your shoulder, torso, hip, and the legs around the long axis of the body. The long axis stroke is, I think your coaches have taken this in a first part of the stroke technique, that is freestyle and backstroke. The freestyle and backstroke, the body roll, and depending on how that your shoulder, your torso, your hips, and the legs roll. Generally, the distance swimmers will have more body roll compared to the sprinters. It's naturally, everyone knows that, because the sprinters doesn't have much time to have a bigger roll, but though they roll a little one, but it is very, very less. But meantime, the distance, people have to have a very good body roll to cover more distance. There are numerous reasons why body roll is so important. I'm just covering about 4 of them. These are the 2, a longer and smoother stroke for an easier recovery. So when you have a longer stroke with a good body roll, you have a very smooth stroke with a good kick, which we have mentioned earlier, where you're going to have a long 6-beat kick. With that, you will have a smoother stroke. Then you will have an easier recovery. Then using all your large muscles, especially your thigh muscles and core muscles, to deliver power. And also, good body roll promotes good leg position, especially the good body roll. We have a maximum use of your legs too. These are the 4 important areas where the body roll is going to help us. And I'm just going to give you a small video, which is, I cannot put it in a bigger screen. And you can just see this on the sprint, where the body roll, all the 3 categories. Please listen to this. Hope that you can hear this from the.
Pradeep, the audio from the video you're running is not very audible, so you might want to explain what is happening.
Oh, okay. It's not a.
I couldn't hear it. I think it might be the same for all.
Okay, just a minute. I think I can, because okay. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Is it everybody? It cannot be heard.
No, we can't hear.
Okay, it is showing a sprint event where your stroke frequencies are very fast. It is a 200 pace where the distance is covered more, the body roll is more in it. And see, this is a sprint one that you are showing them. The sprint swims very faster frequency. This is a 400 and 800. Very different stroke technique for the 400 and 800. This has a big body roll. The kick are very smooth. It is not very aggressive for the 400 and 800. You know, nice body position, long stretch, good body roll. That very nice rhythm. When you are training this, generally all the swimmers, all sprinters, middle distances and distance. So anyway, they have to train all of them. Okay, just going to the next. Swimmers adopt their stroke patterns from a catch precision style to an opposite style when they're changing their distances, pace to maximum sprint pace. The critical change of coordination occurred at the sprint pace to the swimming at a distance pace. It means the change of coordination naturally changes when the distance is a sprint. The sprinters, like I said earlier, the sprinters will go into a faster stroke rate. So this is what I need to talk about on the distance between distance and sprint. So it is nothing much that I to explain, which everybody knows about it. And thank you so much. And I'm waiting for the question and answer for that. Partha? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Pradeep, we'll wait a sec. Partha should come back in with his video and audio in a minute, in
Okay.
a few seconds.
Can I stop sharing the video?
Yeah.
You can.
Thank you. It was very insightful. So let's see what are the questions we have. So we'll be asking you some selected question out of this. Okay, one of the question is, those who have not able to get genetic test or they didn't have the capability to get the same, please, how can we find out whether a swimmer is going to be a distance swimmer or sprint swimmer?
It all depends on which age group that we are talking about. And generally, like I think you must have heard that what Nihar was talking, and nobody will decide whether 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old is a sprinter or a distance swimmer. And at the genetical, this one, a coach generally has an eye of a child who comes to your swimming on, somebody will be definitely show interest in, very fast swimming. And some of them, whatever way that they swim faster, the speed doesn't come. So these are the way that coaches will find out. And there are definitely motor tests available for that, like standing broad jump, vertical jumps, to find out the strength of the the legs. And also there are faster sets like push-ups to find out whether somebody can do a faster activities in dry land. So to just find what kind of muscle fibers that they have other than doing a scientific physical test. So it is possible for a traditional way, you have an eye to find this child can become a sprinter or a distance swimmer. And also when you are training a swimmer, over a period of time that you will easily find someone who is having a distance snatcher who is able to repeat your on time and will prolong your workout without having much of a fatigue. And you naturally know that, okay, this fellow can be trained for distance even. But someone who cannot sustain that kind of, like say a threshold set, like example, you do a 10-400, somebody who is swimming on 5 minutes 30 seconds or 5 minutes 20 seconds at 10-400, a distance swimmer at an age of 13-14 will easily do it, like finishing on 5 minutes easy. But meantime, a sprinter who may do 3, 4, 5, and after that he will struggle to continue that. And these are the small things that we can make out as a coach. So that's a way that we find when we don't have any kind of scientific assistance to find out whether he is a distance snatcher or a sprint snatcher. But then it has been done only some age after 15, 16, 17. Only that time that we'll be able to find out. That is a time that these athletes these children are physically going to be stronger and mature. Is that
Yes,
answer?
yes, yeah. Thank you. I'm looking for some other question. So one of the question is sprint swimming. It's only shoulder-driven stroke, or we do move our hip also?
In the sprint swimming, actually what happens is the body roll is very minimum. So the entire body part, the body roll is very, very, very less. So the kick needs to be more powerful, and you are generally the strength. That is what the whole body part. Definitely the upper body is more stronger. Upper body has to give you 80%, 85% of the thrust to the propulsion in the sprint, but then the legs are also much more important than the distance swimming. You see that the sprint swimmers have to be a 6-beater, kicking very, very fast. Meantime, you can see the distance swimmers. Right now, everyone does the 6-beat kick, but you look at the past, the almost all the distance swimmers were either 2-beat crossover kick or 4-beat kick, and it was in a 6-beat kickers. But the sprint, it has to be a fast, very fast, aggressive kick. So it has to be the whole upper body and the lower body.
Thank you. Coming to the next question, what is the strategical difference in underwater kicking in distance versus sprint?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. You see, and what happens is in the distance swimming, like you swim a 1500 freestyle, you do a 29 turns. So you just think about 29 turns, and that increases to a 59 turns when you become a short course 1500 freestyle. So by rule that you are allowed to kick 15 meters underwater. If you have a strong kick, underwater kick, and just you can go 15 meters underwater and you need to swim only 10 meters. So it is very, very crucial for a long distance swimmer, for a distance swimmer to have a very good steady underwater kick. Unfortunately, fortunately, that you won't be able to stay for that long in a sprint even underwater, because you need to come out your sprint speed that you find your gliding speed is slower than your sprinting speed. Over a period of time that the athlete finds out, the coaches give them the time that you after the dive, this many seconds, this many fraction of second, that is what you need to cover underwater. Say a swimmer who is swimming about 22 seconds in a 50 freestyle needs to cover about 10 meters underwater or 15 meters underwater kick and dive and kick within a probably fast matter of 3 seconds, 3.2 seconds. So if the gliding speed is slower than your swimming speed, and naturally you need to come out much earlier than the distance glide, and you need to come out and start sprinting, because otherwise you slow down. You don't have much time to finish. You don't have a longer distance to swim in a sprint stroke. So naturally the glide is slightly lesser than the distance even for the sprint events. That's the difference.
Thank you. Monal sir, would you like to ask point out any questions from there?
Yeah, I noted a few here. So I'll address them to Pradeep sir. There's somebody who's asking, at what age should we teach our swimmers stroke rate and stroke length, and what are the kind of practices where we can teach stroke rate, varying of stroke rate and stroke length is what I think they're trying to ask.
Yep, absolutely.
Age and how to teach.
Can you know who asked this question? It's a very good question.
I will have to scroll up and I'll tell you in a while.
No problem, don't worry. It's a good question. See, basically, the age group, that is, we start training the athlete. So we have two phases of coaching. I mean, in an athlete's career. That is, the first part is teaching. That I believe a child who's starting to learn the swim process will take about 3 to 4 years to learn all the techniques. And coaches have to spend that much time to learn their techniques. For that is about 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age is the right time to teach some different stroke techniques. By these 3 to 4 years of their primitive years of training or learning, so this part of their swimming career is called teaching. So after that, when the child start 11 years, 10 years and 11 years, they start training, that is coaching. So once the child comes to a coach to train, that is where that they need to be taught from that age. You need to talk about the stroke rate, the stroke frequency. We'll have to teach them a smooth distant stroke at that age, because the technique is very, very important for them to learn at this stage. And later on, it is like, you teach them the handwriting. See, the age of 7, 8, 9, 10 years that you use when your children are into the baby nurseries and your nursery levels, where we teach them with 4 lines, 2-line books, where exactly how to write A, B, C, and D. So that is the time that to be taught the correct stroke technique. If the base of the stroke technique is strong, then at later stage that they will be able to write when they come to 7th standard, 8th standard, 9th standard, they'll be able to write essays by having a good stroke, a good handwriting. It's the same way when they come to the 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, when they progress their training. So to have very strong stroke base is going to help them to increase the yardage. So the stroke remains as strong as possible. The quality of the stroke is going to be good. So by the time they are trainable age, that is 10, 11, 12 years, from that age onwards, that we'll have to teach them the right stroke techniques with good stroke length and the 6-beat kick with bilateral breathing to have good body roll. So the body roll is very crucial to teach them. And that is one area that we can see the Indian swimmers. We have a problem of having the body roll, enough body roll. And this is something that we'll have to instill on them from the formative years or from their start training from the 10, 11, 12 years of age.
Thank you, Pradeep sir. That question had actually come from Rajiv Dey, who is a sports officer at IIT Guwahati. IIT Guwahati.
Rajiv, good question.
And we have another question on a straight arm versus a high elbow, especially in terms of freestyle, in relation to sprint versus distant event. These days, a lot of swimmers are swimming the straight arm freestyle.
Yeah, a good question, but I'm not a big fan of the straight arm sprint because, I mean, as you all of you know, that I didn't have many sprinters in my coaching team, but then there are a lot of sprinters who does that straight arm recovery in sprint, but you know, it's a shorter distance. They do very fast anaerobic sims when they do that. Even in training, they do a lot of straight arm sprints. But in distance event, of course, it's not advisable because it is injury prone, and a good high elbow recovery is important because that is the one which is going to help you to do a good body roll. Like we said in sprint, the body roll is minimized, the straight arm recovery is probably possible. And also your recovery is very, very fast. Your time comes in lightning speed. So it may be good, but then the swimmers have to be very, very careful with the shoulder injury. So in distance, of course, I don't advise anybody to even think about the straight arm recovery. It has to be very high elbow, short body roll recovery on distance events.
Okay, so that question was from Prasad RS, Bangalore.
Okay.
There's someone who would like you to talk or explain a little bit about fast twitch fiber and slow twitch fibers.
I think it
how
is
relevant
one of the subjects in the sports science. I don't know where in swimming class or in the evening scientific class, but still for a knowledge of the swimmers that can just tell a few things which I know. There are muscle fibers are different from different people to differs based on their genetics. Some of them who has the fast twitch fibers, they have the ability to do faster explosive strength. That is naturally they will become sprinters. The one who has, you know, the slow stitch fibers are the one who generally choose the distance events. That is by default, they will not be able to give as much as explosive strength as the fast stitch fibers. See, this is what that as a coaches that we should know that to find out there are scientific methods of finding out through the muscle biopsy and all those things. But then there are a few exercises that we can find about is like vertical jumps where somebody shows very high explosive strength, power. You know, those people generally are like I have example to say two of the swimmers. If you look at, I had a distance swimmer for a long time that he was a national champion, Mandar Divase. You can easily look at him itself, you know that he has low stitch fibers because his sprint ability is much, much lesser than anybody else. So meantime, there were sprinters who are able to do, there were fast stitch fiber swimmers who are able to do a faster explosive work. These are the things that's the difference. That is the way that we find out by the nature of the athletes, who is somebody who is an explosive sprint as the one, explosive strength, that's the one who is having a, generally has fast stitch fibers.
Okay, one other question asked by Parth Varanasi. What do you think about free movement after push-off in each turn and its significance in long distance events?
You mean a longer glide? Is that you meant?
Yes, I think
Naturally,
so.
there is, after each push-off, there is a free movement, that is your body balance into a streamlined position where your push-off speed is faster than your swimming speed or your gliding speed. So you generally start yours after the push-off or after the dive, you do a streamlined position. Then as a swimmer, over a period of time by training or by the coach's advice, that you will know that you are slowing down than your swimming speed or your gliding, your kicking speed. So you start your kick, underwater kick. So that movement of the push-off to the beginning of your underwater kick is the one that which give you the gliding speed. So the gliding speed is generally because of the push off, and depending on your how good is your leg strength, how good that you have trained for it during your training sessions, depending on that you pace it out from push off to beginning of your underwater kick. So once your underwater kick start, then if that we start the underwater kick, that when you realize that our gliding speed is slowing down. So that's what I think I know about it. That I think if I don't know where I'm correct about the question, but this is what I understood from the question.
Yes. There's been a lot of queries regarding the breathing pattern for 50, 100, 400, 800, 1500. You know, coaches are asking what kind of suggested breathing pattern by you in different distance.
Yeah,
there's been many questions about it.
Yeah, you know that in 50 freestyle, some of them do a no breath or one breath. You look at, I think Virdaval Kadai, I'm just coming to an Indian standard. Viru speaks, does about one breath, I think, in a 50 freestyle. And sometimes he even, maybe 50 fly, he does one breath, and 50 freestyle, also one breath, I think. Some of them swim even without that. But then it's all with training, because you do already, it did in many times in training. You do a lot of hypoxic training for that to get fit. So otherwise it is dangerous. So the elder age group, the people who are older and had a lot of training background, does a lot of hypoxic training with the proper supervision. And in sprint, like 50s, does very, very, very less breathing. So in training, generally, normally, the sprinters go about 2 to 3 breathings in a 50 freestyle or a 50 fly. And you know that backstroke and breaststroke, you have breaststroke, you'll have to breathe on every stroke, and backstroke, you breathe at will after the underwater kick. And meantime, the freestyle and fly, there is restricted breathing. But when it comes to the 100 freestyle, again, the breathing is less. But I suggest the people to go into the hypoxic breathing on the second half of the race, because in the initial part of the race that you cannot go into an oxygen depth, and which will cost you at the end of the race. So it's better to have initial part of your race, you breathe once or twice or thrice, and to go into the last 25 meter with the maximum limited number of, with less, the least number of breath. And then it differs to the 200 that you will have to breathe, probably that you'll have to do alternative bilateral breathing, about 3 strokes. And again, the last 50 meter, you may have to hold the breath and swim with the most maximum holding the breath. And the last 25, 15 meters have to be breathless. So in a 400, 800, 1500, it is not good that you go into any kind of breathing control, that because it is an aerobic races, that you will have to breathe often, because you cannot go into either into your two-stroke cycle or your your bilateral breathing pace, whichever way that you have trained, and that is a pace that you'll have to go on your 400, 800, 1500, probably except the last 50 meter where you do fast race sprinting for a finish. This is what I do as a coach. Hope that is sensible for you too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thank you, sir. Monal sir, would you like to point out the next question?
Yeah, there's someone who asked the variation in the hand exit. In the earlier sessions, the presenters had, somebody had asked the question and the presenter said the best point to exit your hand to start your recovery would be somewhere below your waistline. So does this change from swimming a sprint event versus a distance event?
That's what I talked about that during the arm pathway. It is faster. It doesn't go up to your last end of the stroke like distance and sprint. The sprint, even the exit is very faster because your recovery is high. The stroke frequency is very high, so that so because of that you won't be able to go till fully extending your arms for your recovery. Meantime, in distance even, your hand pass through the entire face, entire hand stretch at the maximum level, because you cover maximum distance in each stroke. But that is not generally there for the 50 freestyle or 50 fly, or even any 50 strokes in that matter, because the frequency is very high. So the hand exit in those sprint events are much faster. So meantime, the distance, it is not that, because you does very less number of strokes in the distance strokes.
Thank you for answering that. Of course, not relevant to pace, but the question is on what age can we start using paddles on children, hand paddles?
I think right now there are different size of paddles available with the different companies. So probably the time that a child can do their own body weight exercises, what is their own body weight exercises? Like you can do push-ups or, chin-ups. This is where the hands strength is involved. So the child who can do that, and we can do some kind of TerraBand exercises or even stretch code exercises. Those kids can definitely start using the pull paddles by the time they are about start training, that is 10, 11 years. They can start using the paddles. But then that age group, there are paddles in different sizes. That is what the coaches should see, that only those paddles have to be used. And initially that you can give those paddles swims with the assistance of the fins, so that initial part of their swimming, the shoulders will not be strained, and the techniques have to be correct. So using paddles need to be careful at the very younger age. So the coach needs to use his discretionary sense to understand and know what age group that the child needs to be given the paddles. And I think in short, if the child can do an one body weight exercises, that you can start using your paddles too.
Thank you. Artha, I'm not looking at questions which are subsequently being addressed in next sessions. So,
correct. One other question I found is a simple question. What do you think? Should we start distance training for younger kid at age of 10 to 12?
Yeah, I think no one is classified as distance swimmer or sprint swimmer at that age. See, a coach need to design a program looking at this swimmer, a 10-year-old swimmer, is going to be swimming for another 15 years. So at the age of 10 till 17, this is the age group where you need to progressively increase your training yardage. So gradually to build up to the bodies to overload the system. So there is nothing called a distance swimmer at the age of 10 or 11. I've told you, when you do a larger yardage at the smaller age, because your stroke tend to get spoiled. So you need to gradually raise the yardage for over a period of time by your season by season to progress with the training load. When you work on it, see, someone who's at the age of 10, having a training session about 6 sessions, I'm just giving an example, okay? This is not the, the bottom line to choose 6 sessions of training for a 10-year-old. I'm just telling you about an hour of training for about a 10-year-old boy doing about 6 sessions, covering probably about 2.5 or 3 kilometer workout. And you cannot say that is a distance training or a sprint training, but then it has to be a cyclic training. A swimmer needs to do a certain extent of aerobic training, certain extent of anaerobic training, and more of technique training. So your aerobic training has to be a distance nature. Your anaerobic training has to be sprint. So has to have 25 to 30% of your training at whatever age group that you do, the 10, 11, 12 needs to be in a sprint or anaerobic way. And about next rest of the 70% has to be aerobic, in that even the technique work that you coming also will come to a low aerobic work. So then a specific aerobic swim that you swim about 160, 140, 150 heart rate. So that can be interval training, that can be, the continuous training. So this progressively that you'll have to raise up to the age of 17, 18, 19, till that you think that they have reached a point, their threshold is achieved. So at that point, when you become 15, 16, 17, the coach will identify then whether you need to categorize that swimmer into a sprinter or a distance swimmer. Till the time that you need to concentrate on all the stroke training, that is IM training, and you need to work on all the starts and turns, and you need to work on all the stroke techniques. So stroke techniques are very important, and the technique, even if at a senior level, 20 to 25% of your work needs to be on the stroke technique and the kick sets to improve their leg power. So that is what I feel.
Thank you, Coach Pradeep. That was a very important topic that you touched upon. And of course, we are going to have a session on long-term athlete development. But people over here should, Coach Pradeep made a very important point at not overloading swimmers at a very young age. Continuation on that, there is a question, and coming from Sandeep Sejwal, I'll take that one. If a swimmer is winning medals at nationals at the age of 11 or 12, is it okay for that swimmer to train with the main team, 15 to 17 years group, or who are doing 8 to 9 sessions, or would that still be too much training for an 11-year-old?
See, winning medal is not a yardstick to a training group, honestly. And that is what majority of the people do. But then what is required for an 11-year-old, and you do 11-year-old workout and you win some medals, and that is talent. 11-year-old win a medal doing a 17-year-old work, and it is not talent. That is because the hard work. It is like, you are asking an 11-year-old or 10-year-old who are supposed to be studying in 7th standard to go and sit in 10th standard and study. When you go 11-year-old sit in 10th standard, also probably pass. But then what is the kind of mental load that child is going to take it on that 11-year-old? The academicians are designed the syllabus according to their age group. Same way, that is a mental load, and this is physical load. When the physical load is going to give it to the child of 11-year-old, and you should only give it to your 11-year-old's workout. So doing an 11-year-old's workout and the child is doing good, and then that is extremely good, talented boy. And you continue with him with your correct training load, progress him, and naturally that he is going to perform even at a later stage. But then 11-year-old doing now, after doing a 15 years old workout, when I am not sure what happens when you become 15 years, because I'm unable to know, I don't know how that 15-year-old is going to be overloaded when he becomes 15. So this is, the coaches have to be very, very careful. Especially this problem happens to the single coach. That is small squad training. The coaches do a small squad training, and where there, the success is the most important thing for that particular coach. They start, overloading and overtraining those smaller kids to make them perform. One is parents' pressure. Second thing is, your desire to be successful. So these are going to be really bad for that upcoming child who is going to be probably a champion at that age if you don't do it, now. So I think I answer your question.
Yep. Yes, I'm sure you have.
One question from Srihari. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. One question from Srihari. In backstroke, if we maintain the same body roll as 100 or 200 for a 50 as well, and also if 3 different stroke rate have to be built and work on, is it correct?
Hari, it's like this. I mean, I just addressed Hari because in India, Hari swims 50, 100, 200 backstroke. There is nobody to beat him. So he has to swim all the 3 strokes. But you take the world swimming, you have at a top level world class swimming, generally a 50 backstroker probably doesn't swim a 200 backstroke. It is altogether a 2-3 different category of training, 2 different levels of strokes. So you don't have much of a body roll in 50-meter backstroke, but you need too much of body roll in 200-meter backstroke. Even in 200-meter backstroke and 100-meter backstroke swim in a total different stroke pattern. As you are a swimmer, you know that. You don't have the same stroke frequency for a 200 backstroke as your 100 backstroke. But meantime, your 50 backstroke frequency is much, much higher. I think you go about 28, 30 strokes, I think, if I'm right. But then you can't swim a 50 backstroke and a 200 backstroke at the same frequency or same. You can't kick the same 50-meter kick for your 200 backstroke kick. If you can do that, you will definitely become champion. There is no doubt about it. You come to close to a world record if you can do the same 50 backstroke kick with your 200 backstroke. So all the 3 are different, and I'm sure you are aware of it, but it's a good question for the other people to know that. And so the coaches who are working with top level swimmers in our country, they all know that it is a different stroke pattern, different stroke technique. Even in our country, there are some of them are 50 backstrokers or 50 swimmers are not able to swim a 200 event, or a 200 swimmer is not able to win, though he swims, he is not able to win 50 events. All of them may swim 50, 100, 200, but then winnability is, which is going to be good for his body, his training. That's what I think.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session.
But I am unable to spot any unique or very session-specific questions. If you have any,
Yeah, I totally agree, because there are a lot of questions which relates to the other topic, which will be discussed later.
Let's go. Now, if you have time, I don't mind answering one or two more questions.
There is one from Gagan, our ex-Olympian.
Gagan.
He's asking your views on tapering for a distance swimmer. Is it necessary? If yes, how long before the meet?
Yeah, you have different phase of tapering for different distance swimmers. Of course, the 1500 swimmers also, or distance swimmers also required shorter taper. And as you know that you've been training with me you were training with me for probably 10 years or so. And we had a distance taper differ from the sprinters and middle distances. We do a lot of shortest quality swims to work on the morning, generally based on the heat-oriented swims in the mornings, and you do a lot of longer swims. It is not like what we do for sprinters, what kind of long race pacing that I used to do is, for example, Gagan must have done a set. I do 1 or 2 400s or 2 or 3 400s. And probably the first one would be a 400 straight swim. And after that, you have a lot of 400 easy. Then come back to swim another 400 with a 200 dive. Then you go, that may be on 3 minutes. Then you come out and dive another 100. So that will be in 2 minutes. Then you go to 50s. So 1 minute dive. So that is a 400. Then we go another 400. Probably that will go all 850s on 45 seconds dive. So these are the kind of things that we do while we are coming closer to the competition. That is part of the tapering. And tapering, you know, the problem is that what do you understand about taper? That is the issues. The taper is that we sharpen it. We reduce the intensity. We don't swim 40 hundreds or 50 hundreds during the last part of the phase. That itself is taper. So what do? We do all those VO2 max sessions that we done in the past become the shortest quality sets. All those long distance race pace sims that we have done, that we do exact race pace sims in the evenings or other sessions. That is the way that we train as for the distance swimmers during the tapering phase. I think you would have done ample amount of sets on that, Gagan, and I hope I answer your question. If you answer your question, you say yes. I need to see that yes or no. Oh, right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's good to see that some of our elite swimmers are now spending a lot of time
Yes,
in
indeed.
these sessions, and they are working with younger swimmers. A lot of them are involved in active coaching. That's a very encouraging signal, Pradeep sir. And Partha, I guess, I think it's a wrap.
Yeah, there are a few questions about recovery set, and I'll put one other question out of them. Recoveries, what do you suggest recovery set for sprinters and distance swimmers?
Generally what happens is the sprinters need more of a recovery sessions than the recovery swims. So the recovery sessions are, you have very hard anaerobic swims sessions on a day, on a session, and it is followed by probably a low intensity aerobic sets, work on the techniques. Anything which is with a very low intensity, less heart rate work is called recovery sims. And the recovery sims have many benefits. One is to recover you from the previous sessions, to clear your waste products from the body. Second thing is that helps them to regenerate and repair the tissues which has been damaged during the high intensity work. And the second thing is to go back and work on your technique. So these are the two things work on the recovery. And also you could probably go on to do some multi-strokes stroke training sessions. And this can be more often for the sprinters than the distance swimmers. Distance swimmers, because the high intensity work is generally very, very less number of sessions. But even then, probably the last I used to do is if I have a high intensity sims, like, I mean, our distance swimmer, when I say high intensity sim, is a high quality VO2 max set, and I do followed by good recovery sims. Maybe the yardage is slightly lesser than the other day, and it is work on base aerobic, not that high aerobic work. That is probably that I say about recovery for the distance swimmer. But meantime, for a sprinter, it can be even an off session for an off session for a recovery for a sprinter. Right, Partha?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it is. Thank you so much. Monal sir, do you want to address some question?
There are questions, a lot of questions on how to create sets and all that, but those are not questions which would probably be, how to
One question I'd love
build
to
workout
see. Yeah,
sets.
sorry.
Yeah,
If you
Partha.
can spot something important, address it.
Yeah, I mean, how important aerobic set for sprinters? I think a lot of coaches who deals with sprinters, they love to know that.
Yeah, see, you need to build the base of every athlete. And especially when you're starting off your season, you need to work on base aerobics and the techniques a lot. And you have multiple seasonal plans for probably for a year in our Indian scenario, but in international athletes, generally they have a 4-year-old cycle, 4-year cycle. So their peaking of there is probably on Olympic to Olympic cycle or World Championship to Olympic. And naturally, there are a lot of aerobic work done at that age. But then, in the number of sessions, if the distance people swim about 10 sessions or 9 sessions, the sprinters generally swim very less sessions than maybe about 6 or 7 sessions. But then the other session, they will go and hit the gym or dry land to build up their power. But aerobic work at the beginning of the season is very important, because see, anything that you will have to do, that you will have to build up the base of the training program. What is base? Base is like, you construct a house, you construct a 2-floor house, you have a certain amount of base, that is foundation. But if you want to build a 15-floor building, the foundation is much deeper. It's the same way that your base has been built up that age that I was talking about, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, and you become a sprinter at the age of 17 or 18, probably your coach identified a swimmer, that you have been already built so much of your aerobic base at that stage. It is not that you just are going to be as a swimmer who has no training base. That is aerobic base. That is your base. And then each season, that in the beginning of the season, that you build up certain amount of aerobic base to sustain your training, to improve your recovery. That is another part, to improve your recovery. The better that the aerobic power that you have, the more faster that you recover. And your clearing process, your physiological factors help you to recover faster during the, is there anything happen?
Yeah,
Okay.
Arvind Mani, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Arvind, you're sharing the screen. Okay, that is what, so even the sprinters definitely require certain extent of aerobic work over a period of time.
It was a great session, Pradeep
Great.
sir.
I
I
think
think,
we've
there are a lot of thank you
addressed most
messages
of the
coming up.
questions.
Yeah, sir.
Yes, sir.
Monal
I think
sir, you're
we've
saying
more or
something.
less gone through all the questions. Yeah, I'm just saying we've gone through mostly all of the relevant questions. And if you do not have any more questions which you can take for this session, we can thank Pradeep sir for this excellent
Some question has
session.
come from Tulsi
And
Chaitanya. Can you just see, Partha? What are the question?
Sorry?
Some question just popped up from Tulsi Chaitanya. You know what is the
Yeah.
question? I just couldn't.
Can we have stroke frequency model for all the events at elite level?
No, we cannot have a stroke frequency model because it differs from individual to individuals based on, I just told you, that their physiological factors, their physical appearance, their anthropometry factors. Because the size of the athletes, the size of the arm span, it all makes a difference for events to events, swimmer to swimmer. So there is no specific stroke frequency or stroke rate can be prescribed to any swimmers at any stage by any coach rather. So once you start working with the swimmers, then we will work on over a period of time and develop a stroke rate But again, that keeps changing based on their age and growth. When they start growing, so the number of strokes naturally will come down. So example, if I tell you an example of one of my ex distance swimmers, Saurav Samgekar, he must be here. And he started swimming about 31 strokes in a 50 freestyle when he started swimming at the distance swimming when he was like 15, 14, 15. But then he has come down to 26, 27 stroke in a 50 when he finished 15, 33 and 15 in the freestyle, that he was going about 27 strokes for each 50. So that is the difference. That is when you grow and you improve your strength and you improve your leg power. So naturally the stroke frequency start coming down. So that is kind of, once you start working with the swimmers, you will definitely able to finalize the stroke frequency of each athlete by your own training group.
Actually, that question was asked by Ayush Dubey, and Tulasi's question was, what are your, and we can probably end on that question. What are your valuable suggestions to upcoming coaches of India? That was Tulasi's question.
I think a certain extent, I just listened when Nihar was talking about it, the training philosophies of each coaches. So you need to develop your own training philosophy. What is that you want from you as a swim coach? So it is very, very important for you to have your own training philosophy. And the most important thing, as I know, is that you need to be passionate to do your job. So the passion for your profession, and it should not be, you should not be doing it for a certification, like clinics like this. It is not for certification. It is for a knowledge enhancement. It is for, learning experience. So, and don't look for success overnight. Success come to you if you are passionate, if you are sincere. Then that is my first take on, or the advice to the coaches. The second one is improve, that is add more tools in your toolbox. You know what is the toolbox culture is? The toolbox is like a carpenter has a toolbox. You know what all there in the toolbox? In the toolbox, example, if you don't have a chisel or you don't have a saw, suppose that you have to cut a cardboard, what do? You don't have a saw, you have to cut a cardboard, and you use chisel and the hammer. So you will not be able to cut exactly the way that you wanted, because it was supposed to be used by a saw and cut it exactly the way that you want to in a line. But then if you have all that in your toolbox, that you will be able to do your job properly. So it means enhance your knowledge and add all the tools in your toolbox. So that is your second point. And the third thing is, you as a coach, and you need to be sincere, the most sincere. The sincerity is not related to any kind of compensation. So we are working with a group of children, and you always think that success comes, it is the talent of a swimmer. If the swimmer fails to do or fails to win, it's a mistake of the coach. So you should always take that, keep that in your mind. These are only three things that I have to tell you. One is that you need to be passionate. Second thing is that you need to enhance your knowledge and fill up all the things in your toolbox. The third thing is, don't expect anything from anybody. The moment that you expect, then you will get more disappointed. So a coach cannot have success every time. So no overnight success. Continue working harder as our profession with a passion. You will have